Hello, everyone. Good Monday to everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Presence Posse Presents. And I'm here with Danielle McMahon and Bobby Cobb. And I'm Miriam Siegel. And we're going to be talking about presence and aging. And yay, here comes Jan. So I'll bring Jan in as well. And I know way before we throw ourselves into the topic that there are three of us that have a fair amount of sort of grayish or whitish hair. So just talking about aging, I mean, if we're really, really lucky, we don't escape it. That means we're still alive to get old. If we're unfortunate, we're not alive anymore. And although for some people who are suffering, they may be happy that they're not alive anymore. But some of us look older than others.
Thanks, Miriam.
If I talk about myself. Aging. Who wants to start saying anything about presence or aging or presence and aging? Nope. We don't want to talk about it.
No.
Talk about it. Like, I always wanted to be who I am now. Even as a teenager, I was like, I can't wait until I'm old and I can wear what I want and say what I want and I don't have to care what anybody else thinks. And there's a part of me that looks back on that and was like, why did I think I had to wait? Right. But I knew that I didn't have the wisdom to be that in that moment. And I was looking forward to this. And the interesting thing that happened just yesterday was my daughter was talking to my son's girlfriend, and she said, just talking to your mom makes me feel better. I want to be her when I grow up. And my daughter said, I do too. And I'm like, you know what? When I was your age, I did too. And look, I made it.
Yay.
Right. So just being comfortable in my own skin and not being worried about so many things that seem so important when I was younger is a great comfort to me. And the fact that they recognize it and feel it is like, I made it.
I'm just going to ask a question that not everybody has to answer. I love that idea of I've made it. It's kind of like I'm still trying to figure out if I'm ever going to make it. But I guess it depends. And I'm thinking about that talk we had on, I think it was presence and prosperity. It's that sort of idea of making it or not making it. Yeah, the things kind of weave together. But I remember thinking I knew what I wanted to be and do when I was a kid. And now I'm not a kid anymore. And I'm nothing like what I thought. I'm not doing what I thought I would do. And I'm not the person that I thought I would be, but it's all in a good way. And there's a part of me that's like, I'm kind of running out of time. And you never know how much time you have, but it feels like I'm running out of time. So I better start doing some of the stuff on that so-called bucket list that are on the top of the list. Because I would like to do that. I watched my mother, who died 1 month shy of her 95th birthday, she wanted to visit Israel before she died, and she never got there. She lived to almost 95 and she never got there. And I don't want to do that to myself because I knew it was always something that pained her in a way. So there is that sort of idea of being young and having tons of opportunity and being older and that sort of feeling or that process of, it feels like I'm running out of time. Although whatever time, and I just have a sneaking suspicion that Bobby's going to say something about time.
Me too.
Bobby, but I'm going to let you guys talk for a second because there's something wrong with my microphone. So I'm going to fidget here while you guys talk.
Well, I'm not going to say anything about time, but I will say something about presence. And a couple of ways that I think it's really important. One is, Danielle, I think that you are, and the folks that admire you now you are specifically because you look back and think that there was nothing keeping me from being who I am now. way back then. And I think that is one really powerful revelation. Regardless, you're here now and you're comfortable in your own skin, and that is magnetically attractive. So cheers for that. One thing that I think of with presence and aging, one is I'm noticing in my group, my spiritual group that I'm in, I'm one of the younger folks in my group. I'll be 63 on my next birthday. A lot of folks there are in their mid to late 60s or early 70s. Thankfully, they're all very vibrant. Our founder passed away at 95 a little over a year ago, and she was sharp as a tack right up to the very last day. But one thing I see people doing is almost hypnotically talking themselves into pain and suffering and stiffness and forgetfulness, and that just seems a tragedy to me. And the final thing I'll say is, I think as many people that are listening to this, their parents will still be alive. Mine also have passed away, but I think being able to stay present with your parents, particularly if, God forbid, they suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia, I think our ability to stay present and with them, and not be constantly doing memory tests to say, Mom, do you remember who I am? Or Mom, do you remember who this person is? Or showing a family picture and asking how many that you can name. We from a distance we can look at that and see that that's really kind of a cruel undertaking to put somebody that's suffering memory loss into a memory test, but it's so common. And I think staying present is the cure to really all three of those subjects that I brought up. So I'll pause there and just see if anybody wants to comment or challenge or question or whatever, any of those ideas. Or not.
I love listening to all of you. And Danielle, you reminded me of, I was so uncomfortable in my own skin when I was younger. That wisdom and that grace, or just being more comfortable in your own skin, has come with age and time and experience. As a younger person, I was always more comfortable around older people than people my own age. And, when my relatives would come to visit, it was my aunts and uncles I wanted to spend time with more than my cousins. And I think it was, looking back on it and knowing myself now more and better, they were quieter and calmer. And that was very attractive to me, always. I always sought out the quiet throughout my life, wherever I could find it. And it was just quieter with older people. And I guess I just had a preference for that and didn't realize it at the time. Bobby, what you were saying, I'm 61, I'll be 62 on my next birthday. And I've noticed more and more in the last probably 3 to 5 years that the conversation regularly turns to ailments and pains and aches and challenges and, all that kind of stuff. And it's almost like people that were so just full of life and joie de vivre and, buoyant and resilient. Like you say, it's almost like as people move through their 60s that they take on a different perception of themselves almost. or I'm in this stage of life now, so this must be who I am. Pains and aches and challenges and can't do for myself and all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to be that way. I know just as many people that are still as vibrant as they ever were and, fit and healthy. And in terms of presence, I know I enjoy being with those people a lot more than the people who just want to talk about their aches and pains all day. And it's not that, you don't want to be compassionate or that you're not, with people or present to people, but when that becomes a way of being rather than this is what's going on for me right now in actuality,
Yeah.
it can become the energy changes and it can become I find that a difficult energy to be around. And then, through my own practice of presence, I know that to be true, that I get very uncomfortable in that kind of energy of woe is me or I'm ill or my ailments. And, so there's something for me to see there too. Not sure what yet, but the very fact that I have that kind of a reaction to it tells me there's something for me to see. But yeah, it's quite prevalent that people associate, oh, I don't want to do that because that'll make me look like an old person, or I'm feeling this because I'm getting older, or I can't do this because I'm getting older. And like I say, absolutely no problem being with somebody in a moment where they're having a problem or a challenge or an ailment. But when that becomes almost the new mask and the new way of showing up, it's a different story for me then.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, and I'm just going to bring in something that doesn't really have to do with age, but it has to do with habitual thinking, or a sort of an entrained, not an entrained. What do we call it?
Ingrained.
Inculcated, ingrained. Yeah, that could be it. Well, a way of thinking, because you've been sort of indoctrinated in a way. I've seen where siblings who have grown up with one who is ill and the other or the others are not, inevitably one of them anyway will take on this sort of it's sort of an unconscious kind of learning where for example, the youngest child, I notice that my sibling is getting a lot of attention because my sibling is sick. And they don't do it sort of consciously. It's just they notice. It's like, okay, so if I'm sick, I'll get attention. And so they're always talking about what's wrong. Or, for example, when they get older and they get married or they get in close relationships, he's never good enough. And there's always something they have to, oh, woe is me. There's always some problem. Like I tend to, and you guys are in the posse, so like I'll write things. Just 2 weeks ago, I lost my voice in a really weird way. I thought it was hilarious because I sounded like, I don't know, I was on breathing helium all the time. I got this really sort of peepy voice, and I've literally been sleeping sitting up because I can't breathe well enough to lie down. But my voice was so funny that I decided to leave a voice message in the Posse chat so that you guys could hear it. It wasn't oh God, I'm so sick, listen to me. It was just so funny. Because I have actually quite a deep voice, and here I am talking like this, and I couldn't do it. It was it wasn't even me, except like Bobby, you mentioned it. The laugh was definitely.
The laugh was still there, yeah.
And so, but that's kind of like a different thing because it's not. I actually checked with myself. Am I doing anything to get attention, or am I feeding on this? Like I'm a little sort of vampire or whatever. No, it was actually just because it was so funny. I wanted to share it with people who I assumed or thought might also think it was funny. So, but there's this sort of, again, with older people, there's this kind of idea, maybe, this way of being, like you get old and things start to hurt, and then they don't talk about, or maybe there just aren't enough people who want to listen to the really interesting stuff, like the way it was before and things that are interesting to them. It's more like this hurts and that hurts. And as you mentioned, Bobby, the language testing or the understanding, the cognition testing, there's always doctors in the picture and there are nurses. And my experience of getting older is that people have started, or last 5 years, people have started getting up on the subway and asking me if I want to sit down. That didn't happen before. And talking to me like I'm 2 years old, even though I have like 3 degrees and, you know, like I've got about 50 years of education behind me. But I'm an old person now, so I must be an idiot. You know, there's that sort of, somehow I'm no longer in with all my marbles. And so I think some of it, you end up sort of talking about stuff that they will talk to you about. Like they'll listen, or they know you're old. So, or, you know, you're going to be heard if you say, oh, I've got this pain in my whatever. And somebody else is going to say, oh yeah, I had that. And I've got a pain in whatever. And then somebody's actually listening and you're actually having a conversation, but it's superficial. Sorry, it's not, not going into who I really am and what's going on in this moment. As Jan you were mentioning, this sort of not right now. It's this sort of way of being in the illness and the oldness of being. So there's a cultural kind of thing, like knowing that I'm going to get attention if I'm sick because my sibling was sick. No, I know I'm going to get attention if I say that I've got aches and pains because I'm old, and at least the doctor will listen to me. Or at least if I'm in an old folks home, everybody understands what I'm talking about because they're like that. I just, yeah. Does that ring any bells or, sorry, resonate with anybody?
Yeah, it does. And, you know, I was doing a bit of research earlier because coming onto the call, I was thinking I really don't have anything that comes to mind to say about this topic, but, you know, come on and see what comes up. And everything that came up when I just Googled it, it was all about, you know, perceptions changing as you age and function decline as you age and, you know, how to support yourself as you age. But it was all like really, oh, it's not a good thing here. Need to get you some help kind of a thing. And that's part of the conditioning as well, and the cultural view of old people, you know. And like you, Miriam, I was bagging groceries a couple of weeks ago, and the young guy at the counter said, "Take your time now, ma'am, there's no hurry." Like, are you for real? So now I'm ma'am and I can take my time. So yeah, there are certain, even, I don't want to go as far as saying as expectations, but perceptions about what happens as you age. And I know I have a lot of perceptions about what happens as I age too, but I'm noticing that a lot of them are just that, perceptions. You know, if I thought I was going to be like my mom was when she was the age I am now, I'd be a lot older in my being, in my demeanor, in how I showed up in life. I'm nothing like that. So if I'm like this now, who the heck knows what I'll be like in another 10 years if I'm lucky enough to be here. So it's all just perception, but that's where the presence comes in, because if we're present, we can be with the reality of what's actually happening as we're aging, because it's going to be different for every single one of us. And, you know, and when we're present, our body will let us know, you know, what needs to change or be adjusted or adapted, and, you know, maybe different food or different exercise or a different pace or whatever. You know, but that's the value of presence, is you can actually be with yourself as you're aging and notice what's healthy for you to keep you vibrant as long as you're alive, and to set the odds up in your favor, I guess. Get the best run we can out of this. I've only got one go.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience a couple of weeks back that talked to two of these things. I read a poem that I really liked, and so I published it on Facebook. And it's called "I Want to Age Like Sea Glass," and it's just talking about all of this stuff that sea glass goes through that makes it really soft and gives it that patina that we all like so much. And in the post, I mentioned that I had been experiencing some very intense pain in my pelvic area. And the reason that I was experiencing that pain is I was not listening. I was not present. I was not paying attention. Uh, I've been gardening a lot, and here in Alaska, we have a very short gardening season. We have nice long days. So, you can spend a whole day in the garden and have a full day of work. And I was doing that. I wasn't listening to my body. And also, I was doing a ton of yoga, and I there's no such thing there, or at least there shouldn't be, as competitive yoga or goal-oriented yoga. But I decided to see what it would be like if I went to 12 yoga classes in a week. And between those two activities, my body was telling me, this isn't really working right now. You're overdoing it yourself a little bit. And I didn't listen. I did what, I remind people not to do so often on these calls. I sucked it up. I powered through. I thought no pain, no gain. And what had started off as whispers of wisdom became louder knocks on the door, and ultimately were, shouting, and then eventually a fire alarm. And it was a pinched nerve that I had suffered that, has been resolved now through a couple of things, but the pain was quite intense. And just in that little couple of sentences I wrote before putting the poem, saying that I was experiencing pain, the love and outreach that I experienced as a result of that. So many people commenting, "Oh, I hope you get better soon," praying for you. My energy worker friends are all telling me about the work that they're doing on remotely. People are DMing me, folks with my phone number are texting me. And I did have the presence of awareness to go, wow, I can see how this would be really seductive. It is nice receiving all of this care and love and attention. And what you mentioned, Miriam, of one sibling maybe saying, "Oh, so and so's getting a lot more attention than I am because they're sick all the time." That there is a secondary gain in some of these ills. And if all of your friends are talking about how aches and pains, and I'm not as young as I used to be, and I've had to dial things back, there's a tendency for us to want to kind of entrain with that conversation just to sort of build rapport and, I guess at least be perceived as being compassionate and sympathetic and empathetic and all of those things together. And I think that's the next chapter in the story of the hypnosis of social conditioning, that we're so used, we grew up in many cases with parents who had those things. And my mom used to say that she suffered from CRS, can't remember shit. And it was a funny joke, and always got a laugh. And even back then I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's something that you want to have as a mantra, Mom. Doesn't seem like it's going to serve you in the long run. But a lot of the woes are things that we kind of talk ourselves into a bit. And I think being present is the way that we can break those patterns.
So interestingly enough, I have grandparents that lived into their 90s. And when my grandfather retired, he had the exact take on what you guys are talking about. And he told my grandmother, "We are moving to Florida." You can come with me or not, but I am not staying in this little town in central Illinois and playing cards and listening to people's ailments. Everybody I know that's done that has died within 5 years, and I don't want to do that. And this was her hometown. She was born and raised there, and she had no intention of leaving. So here they are, probably our age. Like everybody seems like they're about the same age in this particular group of us. And they had to come up with a compromise. So when the time changed, they lived in the central time zone. They moved to Florida, which is the eastern time zone, so their time didn't change. And when it changed in the fall, they moved back to Illinois. So, or the other way around, right? In the spring, they moved back to, well, I don't know. Anyway, they were in
That
the
would be the
warm
better way to do it.
winter.
Winter in Florida and summer in
And
Illinois.
they golfed and they had a community and they traveled and took like travel bus tours and they enjoyed their latter years, and I didn't hear them talking about their ailments a lot. Now I wasn't around them a lot, so it's hard for me to know, but he had that same perception, but he didn't buy into it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not doing that. And chose to do something different with it. So I have that sort of example. Like, you don't have to choose to just sit around and be limited and be in pain or whatever that case is. Also, my mom, who didn't retire until she was in her 80s, said, when I turned 60, I thought, oh, that's not so bad. And I turned 70. Oh, that's not so old. She said I turned 80 and I was like, I'm old. So I have to be really careful not to buy that from her, right? Because she has declined considerably since she turned 80. But she's also a medical doctor. She knows what she believes to be all the medical facts. And at some point recently, within the last year or so, she did say, I feel like I spend all my time tending to this old body. Like, I have doctor's appointments all the time. I have to go to this specialist and that specialist, and it takes up all my time. And she is a writer and she wants to write. That's what she wants to spend her time doing. And still, she's trying to make that happen, like schedule it in, because she has all these other things that she has to attend to in her physical being. But she's still an encouragement to me. Like, I understand what Miriam was saying about feeling like, okay, so 2/3 of our life might be gone, right? Like, we're getting down there now, and what is it that we want to do with this time? We don't have that sort of unlimited feeling of time in front of us anymore. So I was thinking about that a little bit. What was it that I thought I would be? What was it that I thought I would want? And I really didn't have a firm concept. It was just this. It was just being comfortable. So, and I don't think I have a big bucket list. I mean, there's lots of things I want to do. I would love to travel. I would love to travel outside of the country. Like, the only place outside of the country I've ever been, I think, is Canada. And I've been there several times, but I still haven't made it to the Calgary Stampede. That's sort of on my bucket list. And there are things I want to do, but nothing that I need to do. So I still feel like every now and again I notice a sign of aging, a symptom of aging, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, oh, well, that kind of stinks. And then I forget about it, right? Like, it really bothered me at first that this texture of my skin changed. And I wore capris, like, for a couple of summers. I didn't wear shorts. I was like, I'm done with that. I'm not worried about it anymore. It didn't, like, the physicality of it didn't change, but my perception did. I think
I
there's
really love that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I love what you were talking about, and I love the question, or the comment out. It's not something I need. Like this idea of getting older and running out of time, and I've been feeling some of that. and realizing that there are things I would love to do before I leave this particular expression of me. But I don't need to. It would just be really nice.
Mhm.
So, and some of those things are starting to happen. Like I'm making plans to do some things that I've wanted to do for like 50 years. Well, it's kind of about time because you never know. Although, sorry, I didn't know when I was 20, but now it's like you're 60. So how much time do you think you're going to have if you keep putting things off? And I mean, my mom worked actually in a hospital. She drove half an hour to and from the hospital 3 days a week up until she was 88.
Wow.
And then she got hit by a car in her car. There was a collision, and then she couldn't anymore. But had she not had the collision, she would have, God knows, she would have been working there till she was over 90, probably. I mean, she was, yeah, amazing. So, like, I don't know how much time I have. My dad died when he was 73. You never know. There's quite a bit of a span there. He was 73 and she died before, just around 95. But when am I I could, tomorrow, but I would like to there are things I would like to do, but I don't need to do them. So I really like that you said that. And that's also part of this presence thing. It's what do I actually need as I'm getting older? What do I need to do? What do I need to know? How do I need to be? What is the need? Because if there is one, then another need becomes, I need to meet that need, or at least it would be wise to do. As Bobby, you were talking about the pain, right? It's the body starts letting you know, and then you didn't listen, and then it's okay, I really need to take care of this, or else it's going to really be way worse, or it potentially, right? So that's the beauty of presence and aging. It's like when I'm present, then I can notice, but I don't have to be in any sort of doomsday thinking about it. And also being present is being present to what kind of perceptions, as Jan, you were talking about earlier, what kind of perceptions I have. And knowing that they are perceptions and that's all they are. They're not truths, they're perceptions. That's one of the things I just am so appreciative of when it comes to presence, is having trained this for many years. It's so easy to notice that, that was just a thought. How much how much truth am I going to attach to that thought so it becomes an energy that becomes a need, instead of it was just a thought. It's just an assumption. It's just a perception. And I can perceive in a different way. I can look at things from a different perspective. I can do a lot of different things and be with a lot of different things. I don't have to buy into that thought just because I'm having it, or just because I was told that it's a truth. It is a truth for the person who said it. It may not be a truth for me. That's anything. But as the topic is aging, like the idea of my body has to break down because I'm getting older, or I have to get sick because I'm getting older, or whatever. I have to get more gray hair because I'm getting older. It doesn't necessarily have to happen like that at all. And one of the beautiful things we do in expressive arts therapy and psychodrama, or at least it's a tool we use, it's what we call role reversal. And this can actually be a real help. It's being present to possibilities. So if I reverse roles with a person who is very vibrant at 80, for example, like I love how your mom said, Danielle, it's like, I'm 60, this isn't so bad. I'm 70, this isn't so bad. So like the vibrance of it, a very alive person, maybe quite healthy person. If I reverse roles with that person, I get to feel like what it is to be like that person, how they feel at their age. And then I can switch back to my own role and then feel that in my body, like, okay, where am I? And this is where I think comparison is a positive thing. I've heard people tell me over and over again, comparison is a horrible thing. Comparison is not a good thing. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to anybody. I completely disagree. I compare myself to people all the time as inspiration. So when I reverse roles with someone who I have an impression of as being more vibrant than me, healthier than me, having some sort of quality or characteristic that I aspire to, and then I switch back to my own role, I can see where the distance is and start feeling into what do I need to do if I want to get there, if I want to feel like that when I'm 80, what do I need to do? And it's amazing how the answers things just start happening so that I can make the choices. I don't necessarily make them. It depends how I am and how present I am, but I can see them, I can feel them, and I know where to go. And that's really cool. Role reversal can be very helpful to bring us to from where I am to what I'm curious about, and then how I get there. And then I let it go because I can't know. But at least I have an idea.
Do you ever pull that thread in a different way and ask, what is it about their vibrancy that I think I might get if I'm as vibrant as whomever?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like and that is a cool thing. You know, you put your mind on what do I need to do to get from where I am to where I'd like to be. And, you know, if you focus on that, the mind will go in search of those answers and offer up all kinds of ideas that might be helpful. But I'm looking at that almost from the flip side as well, wondering, you know, and I'm just hearing it as kind of coming from a place of lack that I need more vibrancy, just something that's stuck in my mind in my life, and just questioning, well, what is it that I think more vibrancy is going to give me, and why isn't how I'm showing up right now just okay as well? And maybe it is. Maybe kind of like you were getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference, and thank you for pointing that out, because that was sort of the difference between comparing and aspiring to or being inspired by, where I experienced this inspiration as very positive. And it's not a judgy thing. It's like it's not an I'm not good enough thing, or I need to be different than the person I am. It's not a judgy sort of thing. It's just more, there's something. For example, I was, how do you say that in English? It's like I had chronic fatigue. I had like 5 jobs and I was doing 3 educational programs all at the same time. And then people started dying, like my mother died and other people. And I was so exhausted, and also different time zones. So I'm flying to Canada and I'm coming back to Norway and I'm absolutely exhausted. And of course, sooner or later, I couldn't get up anymore. And it had gone on for so long that it's almost like I couldn't remember what it was like to have energy in my body, like real embodied energy, and not just something I could imagine having. And that's where a role reversal for me comes in handy, because it's for me a very embodied experience of like, what's it like to have freedom and energy, because I'm flat on my back. And then I could, it's almost like reigniting a candle or turning up a kerosene lamp. It's like, okay, yeah. That's what it feels like. That's where I get my energy from. And then I can sort of start doing, like being that to the degree I can, and being more and being more and being more until I'm there. So for me, it's more of an inspiration for more a full experience, and not a judgy sort of, I need to be something else. I'm not good enough the way I am. Did that make any sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I'm moving to Florida so that I don't go into the trap of thinking that I'm an old person and I have to collapse. It's like, nah. It's giving myself inspiration to do something else instead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and did you say that you had 5 jobs and you were in 3 study
Education.
program as well. And people are dying, and there's a lot of travel. One could make the one could make the case that a nap might be what the body's indicating.
Little rest.
And a little day off.
Who had time for a nap? I'm been a very ambitious person. Yeah, I mean, and that's another part of it. It's like, as you say, in your situation as well, the body will let you know. And if I'm not listening, well, sooner or later, I'm going to run out of gas. And I did. So, and then I had no choice. Then it's like, well, I do have a choice. I always have a choice to keep doing idiotic things and make myself even sicker, or doing something else. And I let myself be inspired in that way. And I love that that's possible. Another thing that's beautiful about it is it gives me the opportunity to look from another person's perspective and gain empathy and insight. So this idea of becoming an older person and having sort of pains and aches and that sort of thing. And what's it like to be like that? I used to work in a retirement home, or whatever you call it. And I was scared I was, around people with dementia a lot. And I got scared because I thought, oh, I'm getting older. That could happen to me. And it wasn't really pleasant to watch. Although there's a lot of beautiful moments, it's still kind of scary to watch that you're no longer sort of running the show. And being able to sort of see things from another person's perspective and understand, so that I didn't have to be scared anymore. There's a gift in that sort of role reversal that we use in expressive arts therapy and psychodrama, that it creates an empathy in many ways, and it also can relieve any kind of fear that I might have about something in the future. And even if there is an illness there, there's insight to be gained from that, also standing in that role as the person with that disease from a different perspective, and what that does with my chemistry in my body. And it can be quite a powerful experience. So it's a different way of being present. It's being present to another perspective and allowing that to inform my nervous system and my chemicals and everything in me, so that I can make informed choices about my life in a different way than I would do if I didn't have that perspective. And that's a beautiful thing about being human, that we actually have that opportunity to do that, be present to a different perspective in a very embodied way. And that's a way to take care of ourselves and not judge ourselves for not being good enough. It's actually giving ourselves an opportunity to be kinder to ourselves and treat ourselves better. That is my experience. So I just wanted to share that.
I think that's really beautiful, Miriam. And it raises another topic that I guess that we haven't spoken about, and that is, the stats would show that as we get older, there's a higher incidence of things like dementia, heart attacks, strokes, among a variety of other ailments. And that's a very real experience for a lot of people as their aging experience. And it could be ours. Who knows? And, I think other than dementia, presence for the person that's experiencing that has a big role to play. I'm not sure why I'm saying other than dementia, because that doesn't really make sense. But I think regardless of, what illness somebody might get as they're aging, for the people that are with them as well, and that, their carers, their family, their friends, their relatives, it's, presence has a big role to play there too, in how we can be with those people and support, somebody that's aging in a not so pleasant way. There are the lucky ones that get to in their 90s full of, vivaciousness and can continue that way. And there are those that can't, and that's not their experience. My dad dropped dead suddenly at 47, so I'm on borrowed time. And my mom died in her 70s. so I could tell myself a story that I'll die in my 70s or before that, but, who knows? Could be the exception and live until 95 and, be the mythbuster, but could be gone tomorrow too. Who knows? We don't know. And I think, you said it earlier, Miriam, the power of presence is we can be with whatever is happening to us without laying a doomsday story over it. Or, it's awful, or a negative story, or whatever. And I mean, I think when people have fall into bad places in their mindset and in their psyche about their health, that's okay too. And it's okay to fall into that place and be there and acknowledge it and allow it to be. It's really only problematic when people get stuck there or lost there and can't find their way out of there. And that's where presence can help, because there's great hope in presence.
Yeah.
I just thought it was important, just to say that it's not everybody's choice or experience to live long and healthy.
Mm. And there's, as you mentioned, there's a beauty in self-compassion.
Mm.
It's, no, I don't always feel good. And as Danielle was mentioning, this pain, like, darn. Yeah, because it is what it is. And that's also that, yes, I am getting older. Yes, I have this, whatever it is right now anyway. And I don't have to like it right now. And that's okay. That's, being present to my resistance is, and just accepting, allowing, at least just allowing it to be there without it deciding how my future will be, how my next moments are, whatever, or without me knowing what's going to happen. It's just right now, I'm really not happy with this situation. And that's the way it is. Yeah. And normally that tends to sort of dissolve any kind of resistance, unless, and that's the other side of the coin, is unless I go into self-pity. And then I stay, which very often is, I think self-pity tends to mask grief. There's grief under self-pity, and it's self-pity becomes, it's not self-compassion, self-pity, but it can resemble self-compassion. Nobody is paying attention to me in my pain. So I'm going to turn all my attention inward to my pain, and it ends up being feeling sorry for myself. And I'm getting so much attention from that. I'm going to stay here for a while. And it never really addresses, and again, being present to, okay, I'm sitting here feeling sorry for myself. And then what's going on? What's that all about? I'm very sad. This is grief. I'm letting go of what was and resisting what is. And as I notice that, I can feel the grief and let it flow. And I don't have to stay in it, and I don't have to stay in self-pity or bitterness or anything else that comes along with it. But sometimes that being in that moment of seeing what my life looks like right now and not wanting it to be that way can be very, very challenging to deal with at times for anyone, present or not present. Mm-hmm. So self-compassion is a beautiful thing, or can be, and self-pity can be a good tool to let me know that I'm actually in grief and bitterness and I'm not moving. That's not compassion.
Yeah. Well, there's wisdom in self-pity, and that is the wisdom. It's letting you know where you're pointing yourself. Yeah.
And sometimes I see what I consider to be an unfortunate cycle where someone will go into self-pity and another person will come and sort of give the person a lot of attention. And that's kind of like training an animal. You give them the reward when they actually do what you want. But this is like giving them, rewarding them for feeling sorry for themselves, right? I come and hold you when you feel really sort of in your self-pity. That is not necessarily beneficial, but it can seem that way. It's okay if I feel, it's like with a sick person, right? Okay, that person got a lot of attention when they were sick, so I'm going to be sick. So I get a lot of attention. So I'm going to feel sorry for myself, and then people will come and feel sorry for me. And that's what I think love is, and attention and all of that. And then I feel better for a while, and then I start feeling sorry for myself again. That's kind of a vicious cycle that I've seen happen. I see you smiling, Danielle.
Yeah, I'm making a parallel with the horses. There's a human tendency when a horse is frightened of something and moves quickly away from it to soothe them, right? To tell them it's okay, it's not going to hurt you. And what you're doing is rewarding that behavior that you don't want. So you have to go against the grain of what your natural instinct would be and tell them, come on, get up here, we're going to deal with it. And then, there are other ways that you can help the horse through it without this sort of coddling, right, is what I would call it. And the first time that somebody said, don't reward my horse for behaving that way, I was like, what? Oh, right, okay. But it was, it's not intuitive necessarily that you wouldn't do that, because it would be a reward. Because if somebody isn't feeling well, you want to support them through that so they get to where they're well. But you don't want to make that the only time that they get attention. So I think that the presence of that is being present with them when they're not doing the attention getting behavior, right? So it's not even, you don't need to be cold to them, but they need the attention when they're well. Or your own body needs the attention when we're well, and we don't wait for it to get sick before we pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And that is a transition that I think a lot of people on this kind of path of presence of being aware that we are more than a body get to a point where this is just information. It's not an illness in our perception. It's just information for us that our body is trying to get through to us, trying to release something, trying to correct something, get it back in alignment, whatever the case may be, that you can move through it quite quickly if you'll listen and actually do what's asked of you by your body. But you do have to have that perception that you are not just that, right? We're not just physical beings. We have these other layers to our essence, and be able to be cooperative with those.
And I think having the presence, regardless of age, to listen to that information non-judgmentally. And if you think of physical pain, so much the reaction is, oh, I've got a little pain in my back. There's a pill for that, so I'll take some Tylenol or ibuprofen or whatever to make the symptom go away. Obviously that's not addressing the cause at all, and it's not making us curious about what the symptom even is. So that's a wonderful point for a little exploration there to say, oh, what's going on? I don't like the way this is feeling.
One of my trainings was is in relational mindfulness, or relational presence is another way of putting it, I guess. I'm in a present state with you, in a present state in this moment. We're in it together. And what happens? What's it like to be me here with you right now? And one of the things we trained was that it's like I'm sitting here, for example, and I have a headache. And instead of taking whatever medicine to make the headache go away, I sit with the headache and see what I notice in my body. And then it's interesting. I'm sitting here with my headache with you right now. And what happens to you as I sit with my headache? And what do I do with my headache when I'm sitting with you? And some people, and it's really interesting, and I could pick this up in myself too. Like, why am I smiling? My head hurts. And it, and I remember I actually had injured myself. So I had a really bad headache. I had a really bad concussion. And, but still sort of putting on this brave face was ridiculous. We're not supposed to take the medicine because we're supposed to practice being present. And and so I'm plastering a smile on my face, for example, or people are being active and talking, and I didn't really feel like being active and talking because my head hurt a lot. And then noticing, well, my head hurts. What else am I noticing? Well, I'm tightening, and I sort of noticing different parts of my body where I'm trying to sort of support my head and the pain and tightening because my head hurts. And then I go, well, do I have to do that? Do I really have to do that? And sort of checking with my muscles, kind of, do you really have to do that right now? No. Okay. And then all of a sudden it would sort of relax and I'd slump down in my chair or whatever, and just taking that slow time. And then I would notice the other person would relax because there's that sort of mirror neuron, or just even the idea of pleasing each other sort of need. And then it dissolving. So this presence, being present to pain without it being an identity and without having to do anything with it, and meeting it with curiosity in the moment, can change the whole experience of the pain so that it isn't even pain anymore. And that was really a revelation. But I mean, there were pretty extreme situations, like a person having to go to the bathroom and then the teacher saying, nope. Because sometimes people will say, I need to go to the bathroom because they're trying to get away from something uncomfortable, and suddenly they have to pee. And so the teacher would go, no, you just be with that for a minute and feel into that. Because sometimes even as we get older and we think we're supposed to be falling apart, we get problems we don't actually have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, I may not need that pill. If I just sit here for a moment, I might find out what's really going on. And it's something completely different. It's something else. I don't even actually have a cold. I'm just doing that because I want attention instead. And that's one way of getting attention, for example. So, yeah.
So I want to bring one more story to the table here for discussion. And it's a story that I read. I found it in the church that I attend, which is called Unity, and it was founded by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And Myrtle Fillmore had been diagnosed with, I think it was tuberculosis when she was young, and it was never going to get better, and blah 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 blah. And she just like took to her room with the support of her husband, and learned to love her body, and would talk to each part of her body in a loving way, and totally cured herself of this ailment. Then when she was 86, she didn't have any bodily complaints. There was nothing wrong with her. And she went around and said goodbye to everybody. I'm dying tonight. And she laid down and died. So to have those possibilities exist, like in an actual factual story of someone's experience, I think makes a huge difference in how we view aging. If the only one we had was the first one of the Western medical, this is what happens, your body breaks down and some one of these things is going to happen and it's just going to stop working. We could actually make the choice and have our physical body still be healthy. So I think that the more options that we have to consider, the more possibilities that we have to consider, the more possibilities that we can live into.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't remember who said it, but another story, and we're going to round off, so I'm going to check in with you guys. A person who had an illness and went in to the germs or whatever it was and said, you do realize that if you kill me, you are actually killing yourself, right? And I just thought that was a brilliant, like to be able to get in touch with, be that present. You can actually get in touch with whatever those cells are, or germs are, or whatever, and say, this is not, this makes no sense. And the person actually got healthy. So, like, I love the opportunities we, generally speaking, have, but don't necessarily or aren't necessarily aware that we have. And we're all telling these stories about experiences of aging and experience of presence. It's all, or a lot of it, training, practice. Practice, practice, practice. I don't think any of us grew up like the way we are now.
No.
And, you know, if I speak for my own self, I'm not the same person I was when I was a kid. I have learned a lot and changed a lot. So it's possible for most anybody. And so ask for the right teacher, what you need to learn, and get in touch with yourselves and practice presence, because there's so many opportunities there. Even as you get older, and maybe because you get older. It's an opportunity. It's telling you something, presenting an opportunity. As we I'm trying to say round off and wind down at the same time. That's not working. As we wind down, is there anyone who would like to say anything in closing about themselves or the topic? Actually, I'm going to ask Bobby, is there something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I could probably go on for another hour if we wanted to. Maybe we can have a part 2 at some point. The last thing that you hit on there, Mary, well, all of us have hit on it, is the idea of the stories that we tell ourselves and how important they are in terms of guiding the human experience. And a thought that I would like to end on is just the idea of who it is that we really are, wasn't born, isn't going to die. And the fact that our vehicle for the human experience may be getting a little bit older and, you know, may need a little bit more TLC than it did. It's both an opportunity to use that as a catalyst to do the self-inquiry, to get in touch with our true, authentic self, and a opportunity to free ourselves from the perceptions that we create by telling that story or a story over and over again. That if we can get to the point where we don't feel the need to assist or resist to the way that life is unfolding, then that to me is kind of the fast path to practicing the power of presence. So,
thank you, Bobby.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yeah.
Ellen, would you like to say anything in closing?
Just that I enjoy these discussions and opening up the possibilities in my own experience of life by the insights that we share with one another here. And I hope that people watch and get that out of it too. And I'm grateful to Bobby for making this into a podcast so that people actually expect to listen for an hour, and all the topics we've done over the last year plus will be available. That will be great.
I think this is episode number 60, actually. Nice one.
Wow.
Fantastic. Jan?
Yeah, I think I just to echo what Bobby and Danielle said, and for a topic that I didn't think there was much to say about. Yeah, there's plenty of scope for part 2 and maybe even part 3. Yeah, so it's been a pleasure as always. And, you know, as Danielle says, I get as much from these as I hope our listeners do. I love hanging out with you guys.
A Monday favorite. I can echo all three. And I thank you very much for bringing your thoughts and your experiences and your stories and support in this forum, because anyone who's watching, I think they have the opportunity to get a lot out of it. And for those of you who are watching and haven't commented yet, you're more than welcome to comment once we're done as well. And for those of you who have commented, thank you very much for doing that. And any of you, more than welcome to contact any of us if you would like to speak more with us. And you've seen our contact information here on this podcast, soon to be podcast. And you will find us also in our free Facebook group called The Presence Posse, because that's who we are. Next week's topic is presents and vacations. Presents and vacations. So, and it's going to be, well, they're all live and interactive, but next week's topic will be live, interactive, and you can join us on camera and microphone because we'll be on Zoom. So please feel free to do so. And then we could have a chat about what you're wondering about and how your vacation is going if you're on vacation and what kind of expectations you have and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Thank you for joining us. Sorry, Bobby, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you can't join us personally, but if there is a question around that you would like to ask, feel free to connect with us on the Presence Posse page or in the Presence Posse group. We post these events ahead of time, and we have had a couple of people who have posted questions there, and we certainly always try to get to those as well. But I'm looking forward to next week's interactive. Back to you, Miriam.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll see those of you who want to join us next week on another edition of the Presence Posse Presents. Take care, everybody.